doable, if not politically difficult. For example, the first thing that you suggested is that the scientists need to be heard, that the people who are doing the day-to-day explaining of what's going on, what the dynamics are of the epidemic right now, what needs to be done to stop it, and why, should be scientists and not politicians. You wrote, in the same way that that General Schwarzkopf was the person explaining what was going on to the Gulf War, in the Gulf War, to the American people. That seems at least theoretically doable. But some of the other things that you talk about, I sort of am reading between the lines, but it seems to me that you're not sure that America will ever get it together to do some of the more extreme forms of isolation and intrusive monitoring.
We are not nearly as together as the Italians right now, who are not famous for perfect cooperation with authority at any time. In Tennessee, people are still insisting on going the right to go to bars and stuff. In England, people, the minute they heard that the bars were going to close down, the bars were flooded for last call. No, and this is just the beginning. This is just an attempt to freeze everything in place. Then the real work begins, and the real work includes, first of all, you've got to get people who are infected out of their homes so that they don't infect their family members. And that means they're going to have to go, even if they have mild cases, even if they have almost no symptoms, they're going to have to go someplace where they can get over it together. And so that the ones who crash, which is a big phenomenon in the second week for people, they seem to be doing fine, and then some of them crash and need to be on oxygen. You don't want to be having to call 911 at that point because there may be no ambulance for you. You'd be much better off in something like the Javits Center, where there's a nurse keeping an eye on everybody in the room who's got a number of oxygen tanks over by the wall so that when you need oxygen, somebody can get it to you, instantly. And plus we need to find the fevers. Plus we need to test literally millions of people, because the first time you get a negative test means nothing. A negative test yields no information. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days, even after you have symptoms, for a test to turn up positive. So there's a lot more to do even after we go into a lockdown. And the president is talking about after 15 days, this may likely be over. And that's a disastrous way to look at it.
In terms of finding the fevers, I was interested to see that Dr. Fauci did an interview with Science Magazine in which the interviewer asked him, listen, in China, one of the things they do is they, point an infrared thermometer at your forehead before they allow you into the grocery store, before they allow you on the bus, to check to see if you've got a fever. Is that something that we should be doing here? And Dr. Fauci responded positively to that and said, I will bring this up in our task force meetings. Logistically, I don't know if we can do it, but there's a good case to be made for doing that. To hear him talk about a measure like that positively is of interest on its own terms. But of course, it raises the question as to what we would do with people who had fevers. What you've described as these sort of temporary hospitals where people who have mild or moderate illness have to leave their families. People who have fevers and get diagnosed as even just mild cases need to be isolated outside of their home. That would be the next logistical step you'd need in order for it to make sense to widely screen people for fever, right?
Yes. And look, this is tough. You have to see, this is an open carry issue. I mean, is it safe to walk into a grocery store while openly carrying a fever? You're endangering the other people in the store. You yourself may not even recognize that you're sick and may need to crash. The fever doesn't mean you're tossed into isolation. The fever means in China that you're taken for a test to see what the cause of your fever is. They try to pull out flu, and they try to pull out the possibility of it being bacterial pneumonia and see, okay, if you have coronavirus, now we're going to put you in isolation. We're going to, you're for your own protection. Not everybody's case is mild. It's a misnomer to believe. You've probably seen the TV today. I mean, I had an email from a family of a 25-year-old guy, a very athletic young man. He's in an induced coma and on a ventilator now, and he can't get Gilead's remdesivir drug. And there's a 12-year-old girl in Georgia who is now, may or may not make it. This notion that it's all only going to kill grandma, as if that were okay, has got to stop.